Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Workshop Wednesday presentation. I am Suzanne, and I'm one of the librarians here at the Robert R. Muntz Library. Today, I'm here to talk about using Sciwheel for your thesis or dissertation, or really it could be for any other project. In today's workshop, I'm going to be emphasizing some of the ways that you can import and work with a large number of references, but I'm also going to be highlighting how to import reference information specifically from some of the databases you have access to through the library. If you are not familiar with Sciwheel, Sciwheel is a reference manager, so it can help you organize and manage your references. In addition to pulling in the information you need to cite a source, you can also upload the PDF, so you can read the articles, highlight and add notes, and keep everything for your project all in one place. Today, we are going to be focused on managing your references within a private project, but you can also collaborate with others using shared projects. With access to the premium features through our institutional subscription, you can get access to article suggestions and view the article recommendations from their partner product, Faculty Opinions, to help you discover and assess related research. There are also Word and Google Docs add-ins that can help you cite while you write up your paper. There are many different reference managers out there. Many you can get at least some version of for free. And maybe you have used others in the past or are currently using another one. I'm here to talk about Sciwheel today because as current UT Tyler students, you can get access to the full version of Sciwheel through the Muntz Library. In case you are not already using Sciwheel, the first thing we need to go over is how to get your account set up. To get started using Sciwheel, you must first sign up for an account. You will want to do this from on campus or through the virtual desktop if you are a distance student. On the library website, if you click this banner here and go to Information for Graduate Students, under the Help Guides, you can find a link for the Graduate Student Guide. On this guide, if you go to Distance Services, you can find information about connecting to the virtual desktop. There is also some information on this guide about Sciwheel located under Research and Writing. To get to Sciwheel from the library website, click on Databases by Title right here underneath the Swoop search box. Go over to S and locate Sciwheel in the list. Once on their page, if you click on the Sign In up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can change here from yes, I have a password to no, I'm a new user under where it asks you if you have a Sciwheel account. And there you would just fill in the information and get your account set up. Since I already have an account, I'm just going to sign in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing some of this stuff, but let me point out a few things. Clicking up here where you see your initials, this is where you can set some of your account information. So one useful thing that I want to point out here is the notification settings. You can set how often you want to get emails with article suggestions based on the projects and the references that you have in those projects. So that's kind of useful if you're working on a large project and you're wanting to discover related information. You can have those article suggestions emailed right to you. Here is where you can access the help guide. Sciwheel does have a lot of videos in here that can help you with using different features of the product. So this is a great place to be aware of. So you can check that out at a later time when you need some more help. You can also send the Sciwheel team a message if you're needing help through that little icon down here in the lower right corner of the screen. And don't forget that you can also contact the library. You can get in touch with the library help desk, or you can get in touch with your librarian with any questions about Sciwheel that you have as well. If you open up the drop-down menu here under Tools, you can see the additional products that they have that you can use with your Sciwheel account. You can get a browser extension. You can get the Word add-in and the Google Docs add-on as well. Today, I will show the Word add-in briefly towards the end of the document, and I will be demonstrating how to use the browser extension for importing references. Now let's review some of these options down here on the left column on the side of the screen here. We're going to be reviewing the import references pretty much in detail. So let's just look at these other things that are listed here so you have an idea of what you can find on this page. All references will show you all of the references that you have in your Sciwheel library across all of the different projects and also those that aren't assigned to any particular project. If you click on unsorted, this is going to show you those references that have not yet been assigned to a specific project. And incomplete will show you any references that are in your library that are missing core citation information. We are also alerted to these by this red exclamation point here, and it shows you that it's missing citation data. So this core citation information, that would be things like the publication information, so what journal it was published in, or the year, or the author information, those core pieces of information that would be needed to create a proper citation for the item. So when we look at the individual articles, I will show you where you can go to edit this information. So you have references that import with missing citation data, you are able to go in and edit those and make sure you have everything that you need to be able to cite them. You also have a reading list. Here you can add items to your reading list, so that might be helpful if you're pulling in multiple articles all at one time, but maybe don't have the time to read through them or assign them to particular projects. You could add them to your reading list, making it really easy to come back to them and look at them more closely at a later time. Or however else you choose to make use of this feature that would be helpful to you. You can set up private projects. So you can organize your references into different projects. And this is where we're going to be spending most of our time today for our examples. You have shared projects as well. So you can also set up shared projects if you are working on projects with others. And you have archived projects. So once you are done working on projects, you can move them to your archived projects. So if you have a lot of projects that you're working on, this is useful for separating out the older projects a bit from the ones that you are actively working on. Helps keep things a little more organized and easier to use by keeping it from getting too cluttered. And then down here, we can see some tags. Tags are another way that you can use to label your references, help you organize and sort them. And we'll take a closer look at them a little bit later in this workshop. So let's go back up to the top, and we're going to now talk about importing references. And we're going to work through some examples with all these different options that you have. So if you click on import references, you can see that there's a number of different ways that you can import your references into Sciwheel. First, you have the option of importing reference information from PDFs. So for the examples that I'm going to do today, let's keep these all in a project folder. So I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to call it Workshop Wednesday. And now I've got a project set up here for all the examples that we're going to do today. And I'm going to be importing things in a couple of different ways. So I'm going to actually set up subfolders or subprojects. And we're going to put all of those different examples into their own project folder, into their own subproject folder. So this first one I'm going to do as PDF import. And I'm going to create that sub-project. You can do one level down with a sub-project. So we wouldn't be able to add any additional ones underneath this PDF import that we just created. But over the overall project of the Workshop Wednesday, we're able to add multiple sub-projects underneath there. So I'm just going to go ahead and create all the folders that I need for the different examples that we're going to work through in this workshop. So just give me a moment here to get those set up. Okay, so one of the things that I want to mention is that if you click on import references up here, and you import a number of references or any of the references from here, they're going to be added to all references, and they're not going to be added to any specific project from the beginning. If you're working with a lot of references and you want to make sure that if you already have a lot of stuff in your Sciwheel, you want to kind of separate these out so they're easier for you to identify, I would recommend setting up a project or a sub-project folder for whatever you're pulling in and do the import from within that project. That way your references will be added directly to that project that you're in. So let's go and we'll do that we'll do this import that way. So we're going to go to the PDF import subproject that I created, and I'm going to click on import your references from here. So now it gives me the same options. So I'm going to open up the PDFs and you can locate your files that you have saved on your computer. So I'm going to click on computer and you can see here that it says you can do up to a max of 100 PDF imports, PDF files imported at one time. So just browse to locate the folder that you want to pull in. So I'm going to find my folder here and I'm going to open up these and those are going to import into this project that I have. And I don't know if you noticed, but the files, the PDFs that were saved on my computer, they were not named any certain way. They weren't even named in any kind of descriptive way that you would be able to note, be able to tell what kind of file it was, what the article title was, or anything like that. I just kept that generic, when you download from a database, a generic type of filing name, but that doesn't matter when they're importing into Sciwheel. So Sciwheel is going to get all that information by looking at those PDFs as it's importing and pull that information out for you. And because we imported from PDFs, it actually attached the PDFs to the citation information for us. So we can see here that we have the option to open the PDFs. So we're going to be coming back to this file or this project to do a couple more examples later on. And we'll be working with those PDFs and opening those up and showing you how you can add notes and highlight and that kind of thing. But you can see here that it does give you an alert up top when you're doing an import. If they successfully imported, if any were duplicates and found in your library already, if some imported with missing citation information. So that is useful information that you want to keep an eye on. And I would suggest if this is important for you to know, take note of it now, because if you close out of this or you switch to another screen and come back, I'm not aware of how to, or if there is any way to get that alert information back. So you want to take note of that if that's important for you to know. Okay. So that's the basic example that I wanted to show of importing from PDFs. If we go to look at some other options, if you are working in another reference manager, if you use Zotero or EndNote or Mendeley, you do have the option to copy references over from other citation management programs. So that's not going to be something that I show today, but that option is something that you can do if it applies to you. And if you want to try Sciwheel and you've been using something else, you don't have to start from scratch. You can copy your files over and get started from there. Okay. So let's get into some examples of using this next option for the reference files. I'm going to show how to export large groups of references from PubMed, APA PsycInfo, Scopus, and Web of Science, and then import those references into Sciwheel. So in each of these, I'm going to do a quick search and apply some limits in the database just to get us a set of results to work with. So please remember that these are examples of how to export and import the references, not examples of search strategies. So let's go ahead and we'll close that. We'll go back to the library's website and I will start with PubMed. So Sciwheel was developed for the life sciences and it works very well with PubMed. Okay. So here in this search that I've done, we have 59 results, so not too big of a set to begin with. So from here, if we click on Send To, and we click on Citation Manager, Then we can say whether we want to, pick all of the results on this page or all of the results or just a selection of the results. So let's go ahead and say we're wanting to pull in all of the results here and then create file. And you can see that it downloaded to a file, and this file should be in my downloads folder. So if I go back to Sciwheel and I go to the PubMed subproject that I created, I'm going to put those in here. So if I click on reference files, and if you're looking for that folder, check to see if you can find your downloads folder, and this should be my results right here. So I'm going to select that, and those references are going to be imported for me. And you can see I've got 59 references imported successfully. So anytime that you're working with a large number of references at one time, I do suggest doing some checking between your import and export to make sure that you got everything that you wanted to get, and also take note of those alerts again, just a reminder about that. So if you wanted to do any checking between any imports and exports and make sure you got all the information, if it's helpful to you, you are able to export all the files or all the information from your project. So if you select them here in your project folder and actually go to all references because I want all of them selected, and then you go to copy, export, email, and other options, you are able to export as, and you can export it as a CSV. So maybe some kind of, a file that you could sort through and look and make sure and cross-check between what was exported to make sure that everything comes over correctly. So just a way to get it in a way that you can easily check some of that information. That is also where you can go to move references or copy references between folders and projects. And you can see you can generate a bibliography. So from all of the references that are in there or any that you selected, you can get a bibliography this way as well from one specific project that you're working on. So that is an example of PubMed. Let me close some of this out here, and we are going to go back to the library website. And now I'm going to take a look at APA PsycInfo. So we have APA PsycInfo through EBSCO, but we have many other databases through EBSCO also. So any of those are going to be similar to what I am showing you here. Okay, so I've gotten the search results here to 266, so a little bit more than what we were working with in PubMed. And there may be another way to do this, but this is how I know to do it. So this is how I'm going to show you. What you can do is you can go through and you can click on share, and you can pull these results page by page into a folder. So the results is going to pull 1 through 50, and it's being added to a folder. So I'm just going to work my way through these pages. And I'm going to add these to that same folder. Okay, and then once you have them all added to your folder, you can go up here to the top of the screen and click on folder. And you can see that we have 266 articles in our folder. And from here, you can select and you can export. Number of items to be saved, 266. You can do an export of up to 1,000 articles at a time. If you were working with more than that, I would recommend checking this box to remove these items from folder after saving, so that you can do it in a group and then come back and finish the rest. But we are going to select this first option, the direct export in RIS format. And we are going to click on save. And we've got our file here downloaded for us. So it's the same thing. We're going to go back to Sciwheel. Let's go to the APA PsycInfo. We're going to import those references. And we're going to locate that file. And those are being imported for us. While that is importing, since we are working with a little bit larger of a group of references there, I'm going to go ahead and get the other database started. So I'm going over to Scopus. And I am going to do a quick search in here. All right, so going back to check on our references from APA PsycInfo, we have all of those, and they looks like they all imported successfully. So we're going to be doing the Scopus search now, and you can see that I'm doing a little bit of a larger search here. So, you know, I've got 1,611 results, so we can just work with these. If we select the ones that we're wanting, so you could do it just a selection, or you could select all of them, and you click on export here. This is where you can choose which format that you want. So we want this format here for our reference manager. And you can also get the information that you want to export. So if there was additional information you're not interested in getting, you can deselect, or you can select some additional things here. With Scopus, you can go up to, I believe, I think it's up to 2,000 items at one time in this format. So even though we have over 1,000 here, we should be good to do this in just one file here. So we can click on export, and we're going to do the same process. So we'll do the Scopus, we'll import reference files. Here's our search results from Scopus. Open and import. And now those are going to get imported. And that's probably going to take just a little bit of time here, because those, you know, are a lot of references in that file there. So the last database I'm using for examples is Web of Science. So we're going to go ahead and get that one open. And we'll come back and take a look at those that import in just a moment. So I'm going to get my search built in here. Okay, and that is taking some time there. So let's close out of some of these things because we are done with them for now. And we can see if we can go ahead and get this Web of Science one started. So if you select your items there, you can do selections. You got the export option here. So here is where we can select which format that we want. So let's go ahead with this. And I have only selected 50 because when I did that, it only got the ones that are on that page. You can do all records, or it only selected those 50. You can do all records on the page, or you can do up to 1,000 at a time. So you have that limit of 1,000 in here. It is similar to EBSCO. So if we have over 1,000 here, so if we were going to import all of them, if you were working on something where you are working with this large amount of references, you would have to do it in groups. So you could do different groups until you get to the end. Now, when you're working with something like that, where you're having to do batch imports and do different groups from the same database, if you were setting it up like that, like how we set it up, where there's separate sub-projects for each of the searches, once you do that initial import and you have some references in there, I'm not aware of anywhere that you can go to do another large import when you're working within the project. So you would be able to do an import of the reference file and just have them add to your references and then go through and add them to the project. If you already have stuff in your library though, and you have a lot of references, it may be easier just to set up another folder for that second group. And then you can add those into it so that they're kind of separated from everything else that's in your library. And then once you have them in that folder, you could just move or copy that second group of references into the same folder as the first. So that way you're able to collect them all together. So just it might be an easier way to sort through and handle your references if you are doing something where you are working with this many. But we can just go ahead and do the first 1,000 for the example today. You also have down here the record content. So if you wanted to make sure that you get the abstracts as well, you can go ahead and select that, or you can just say full record and just pull in all that information. So when we start to take a look at how the individual references, what information shows up for them, you can see if it's useful for you to have those abstracts pulled in, you can change that options here. So we'll go ahead and export this. Okay, and that is going down there, and let's see, let's refresh that. Okay, so we've got 600 showing up in Scopus. Now, I believe that we had more than that, so I'm not exactly sure because I moved away from the page what might be going on. So that's something that I'd have to come back and take a look at, but we're just going through the process to show you how to do it. So we'll kind of step away from that. Again, that doesn't seem right to me, but I'm not sure right now what might be the problem there. Let's look at the Web of Science and see if we can get this large file to import. Okay, so you have another pending action. It may be that it's just still working on that Scopus import. So we're just going to leave that alone, and we can move on just because I don't want to waste time just sitting here. But you can get the idea of how you go through that process. So that was just a look at 4 different databases and how to do that. So look for similar options if you're working in another database where you can do that export and you select the file type that's compatible with Sciwheel and you can do those imports. And I already showed you how you can export the references from a certain file, so I'm going to skip over that. Now, if it is still working on this, yeah, okay, so it's still working on that import. I'm not sure if it's going to let me work through the rest of the examples, but we can just talk through them if it's still working on that. So import references. You can also import references from identifiers. So it will recognize those DOIs or the PMID. Like I said, it works very well with PubMed. If you're, getting want to get a book reference in, you can use the ISBN number, and you can just enter that number here and hopefully pull the information for that item and add it that way. So that can be really useful if you're just adding, it says you can do multiple ones, but probably more useful with just a single one here and there if you have a number available. You can do from search results. So from the search results, from what I can tell, it searches PubMed and Crossref. So this could perhaps be another helpful way of locating maybe a known reference. So maybe you didn't have the DOI or the PMID, but you maybe knew the title of the article. You could try locating it through here. And then you have the option to create references manually. So you have the option to select from a number of different types of sources. So this is really useful if you're working with things maybe different from, your standard articles or web pages. You're working with artwork, or you're working with, you have personal communication that you need to put in, things that you're going to be using and citing in your project or your paper. If it's not something that's easily imported through some of these different features of Sciwheel, you can always go in here and add references manually. So Sciwheel was built for life sciences, but it doesn't mean that only those that are in the life sciences fields can use it. No matter what your discipline or subject area is, you can use this as your reference manager. When you're working with like the writing and citing of it, your paper, there's over 7,000 citation styles to choose from when you're working on formatting your citations in your paper. So it definitely is useful for, lots of different subject areas. Okay, so let's see if this might be, okay, it's getting there. So that's just a couple of examples of those different import reference options. I am going to show some examples of importing references using the browser extension, but first let's review how to edit a reference if it imports with missing citation information, because I did say earlier that I was going to show you how to do that. So let's go over to just my references here, and I'm just going to click on incomplete. And so I'm just going to select one of these here. You can see the missing citation data, that red exclamation point. If you click on that, that's going to open up where you can edit the metadata for the record. So if we scroll down here, we should be able to see that the missing core fields that they're saying that is needed, those are going to be highlighted for you in this red red outline. So you can edit from here, and you could save, or for any reference, even if it's not missing citation data, if you needed to go in and edit anything in the record, you should be able to click on these three dots up here and go to edit from here. And that's also going to pull up that edit reference area. So that is where you can edit the information and get your citation data in there. So it's all complete for when you need to cite it. Okay. So it looks like we're just going to skip over the import of Web of Science unless it starts automatically, which I'm not sure that it would. But we're going to work with importing using the browser extension. So I already have all these extensions and add-ons on my computer. The browser extension is up here, this little icon up here. And I'm just going to show you the same databases. So we're going to look at the same four and show you how it looks to import using that. So I'm going to go close out of this. So we'll just go in the same order and start with PubMed. So from PubMed, you can see that I've got, I believe, only 10 results on the page. Yeah, so 10 results are showing on the page. And if I look at the browser extension, I can see that it is recognizing all 10 references that are found on this page. So you have the option of doing it that way and importing all of them. From here, you can also select to add it to a specific project. So this is one way that you're able to get those references put into a certain folder for you. or you could just leave it as unsorted, or what you're doing. You can make those selections there. So let's just pick one of these. I'm not sure. We'll see if it's going to let me do it, if that Scopus file is imported yet. So I'm just going to put this in PubMed, and I'm just going to do that one, and I'm going to try to add that. Okay, so we can see that it added it, and we can click to view it in your library. And if you do that, it's going to take you to that article record that we just added. So it's right there for you. All right. So another thing I can show you, let's go ahead and, all right, I think it was this one. I'm going to go into that article record, and let's say, okay, I want to import this. Well, we can see that once I click to do it, this article is already in my library. So it's not going to let me import it again. It's going to tell me it's already there. So I could go and view it in the library. Or once you have something imported, if you click on the browser extension, you can see the showed site. You can show the cited articles, so we can see what articles they identified that could help you find related information and pull, more articles in that you would be interested in that way. You can also look at your notes and stuff. If you have already worked with this paper and you've added notes or highlights to it, you can view those or the tags from the browser extension as well. So we're going to be doing some of the notes on the PDFs in just a moment, but that is an example of PubMed. It should work, just fine with PubMed for the browser extension. Let's see. I think that's almost complete. Okay, so APA Psych Info. Let's go back to that one and look at that with the browser extension. Okay, and for this, I'm just going to look at those with the full text available, because it does make a difference as to how you're viewing the article, whether it's going to import correctly or not when you're working with one of the EBSCO databases. So if you look up here, it does have 50 here. So it is identifying those that are on the page. So this is one way that you could select the articles and hopefully have them import correctly. If you select an individual article and you go into the article record, if you click on this, you can see that it says article, and it is showing the article title. So this should work correctly, APA Psych Info. I'm going to add it to that folder and put it in there. Okay, let's go to just a different one just to make sure. If you were in the PDF though, or if you were viewing the full text and you're on this page, if you go to the extension, the browser extension, and click on this, it says article, but it has this EBSCO host at the end. So I'm not sure about this. Let's add it to our folder and view it in your library. And you can see that it did not import the way that I would want. It, pulled it in basically like as a web page with this link here. And that's because you were in the PDF when you clicked on the browser extension. So if you're working with those databases through EBSCO, I would suggest either doing it from your main results page, where you're able to select which articles you're interested in from there, or from the individual article from the article record, not when you're viewing it in the PDF, because then you're going to have it import like this, and this isn't going to be helpful to you. You would have to go back and change that. So wanted to point that out with the EBSCO databases. All right, so I'm going to close out of this, try to move along here in Scopus. Okay, So if you notice the browser extension, it is identifying references on this page. So these should be able to be imported correctly where you have the citation information. If you're in an article record, also in Scopus, you have the, it says, document details. Let's go ahead and make sure Scopus, I'm adding this record, but it should work okay this way as well. So it seems to work pretty well with Scopus. So that's how you can use the browser extension from there. And we'll take a quick look at, okay, it did finally finish. Okay, so we shouldn't have any problems with adding anything. And Web of Science is going to be the last one I take a quick look at here. Okay, so if you notice the browser extension does not have a number, it is looking at it saying web page, document search. This is not going to work the way the other ones were. It's not recognizing those on the page. If we added this to our folder, you can see that it's not going to have anything. This is what it's going to look like. It's not going to do that import of the reference information. So if we clicked on an article and we go from here, it is also showing the exact same information. So it really doesn't work well, even from the article record in Web of Science. So what are some ways to work around this? You could look at the article information on the publisher website. If you go to the publisher website, it should work from there. So you would be able to import the article information that way. Or if you click on this to look it up on Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is another one of those places that Sciwheel does work very well with. So you should be able to pull it from Google Scholar without a problem too. So you could select the one that you're wanting to add and add it to your folder that way. And you also have the option, if you are searching in Web of Science, to do that export and import like we did with the large group of references and just do selected references instead. So you can see that, the browser extension works maybe better with some places than it does with others, but even if it doesn't necessarily work, perfectly, there are ways to work with it and there are ways to work around it. So that's really what I wanted to show with importing references, and that was a lot of our time. So I'm just going to highlight some different things now that we have some references in here. Let's go to our PDF import because we have the PDFs available, and just kind of walk you through what's useful on the project. So you can organize your information. If you're working on a large project, it'll be useful to maybe tag some articles with, whatever, maybe it's a certain topic that this article is talking about, or, this is really relevant to paragraph 1 or section, B that you're going to be planning on writing in your paper. So you could, create tags. You can add tags to individual articles, or you could, select them and add tags to all articles in a certain, folder that you have, whatnot. And then you can use those tags to sort your article, your references, and only pull those that have that tag assigned to it. So you can make use of that feature. And then you can, let's take a look at how you can make notes on things. So once you have the PDF uploaded, you're able to open it up and you can add highlights, you can add notes. And then you're able to search those notes. You're able to pull those notes up in like Word when you're actually doing your writing and take a look at what you highlighted and what you noted, and can help you along with your writing process. So let's say this is important for paragraph 1 and save. And I'm just going to quickly do this on a couple of them here so that I can show you in the Word document. How these will pull up. So I'll just highlight this. You could, assign colors for different, meanings. However, it makes sense to you to organize your information. So click out of that. If you're in just a brief overview of an individual article record, you can look at any notes that are assigned or have been made on that record. So let me go back to this one. Okay, so this is the one I had already made a note on. You can see that that note is showing here. If you're working on group projects, you can have shared notes and everybody can see those notes, use the same tags, and talk to each other. But if you're working on something like, a thesis or a dissertation or something large, mostly individual project, you're going to be able to, use this to organize your own thoughts about things, make notes on those articles. You also have related articles. So this is one of those premium features of Sciwheel that you have available through our institutional access. So this is a place where you can get suggested articles based on the one article that you're in. The more you interact with their algorithm, the more specific your suggestions are supposed to get. So it takes into account whether you add it to your project or not. So you can maybe find additional research this way. You have your, if you didn't already have the PDF up here, you'd have the option to upload the PDF, but you also have links to where you could maybe get to the full text of the article. You've got, you can see what tags have been assigned to it. You can see what projects it's assigned to or in, and then you can see who can view it. So if you had a shared project, you'd see multiple people here because they can view all the references in that shared project if they're on that project. Here's where you can add it to your reading list if you wanted to come back to that. And here's where you can pull just an individual citation. So you can pull it on project level for all of them or selected ones, or you can do it individually and you just wanted to pull that citation. And you can select the style and everything like that. On the project level, you've got your notes here. Now we're in a sub project, so you can see your notes for all of those that are in this project. Now all these articles that are in our sub projects are in the overall project. So if we go to the overall project of Workshop Wednesday, we can see our notes here. That's going to be all the notes across the different sub projects, but we also have suggestions based on the project level. So all of the references that we put in there, it's making suggestions on whether we add or dismiss. That's going to work with that algorithm and make it more specific. And then the manuscripts area, if you were doing work with Google Docs, you could link to your project somehow there. And then I'm going to show you the Word add-in, but that doesn't seem to, the previous Word add-in that they had, plugin or whatever it was called before, I think that linked to the manuscripts in a different way than it does now, but that support for that ended at the end of this August. So the Word add-on currently, I'm not aware of a way to make it work with this manuscripts area, but we will show you, or I will show you the Word add-in and how you can use it along with your project folders that you have set up here. So let me just make sure that I have covered what I want to cover here. One of the things that I wanted to mention also with importing large reference files, let's take a look at Scopus and see. I noticed this on a previous import that I did, that you might have some additional information added in here in your notes that, I didn't go in there and make all these notes. These were put in with that import. So, if you're doing something like that, you might want to come through and if this information wasn't important to you, you could delete these notes and kind of declutter that area and make your notes easier to work with. But that is something that I did notice trying to do those large imports with those reference files. Okay, so let's switch over to the Word document so I can show you that in these last few minutes of the workshop, and then I will try to take any questions that you have. So in a just blank Word document here, I have the add-in already on my computer. So up here in the toolbar here, I can see Sciwheel. And so I can access my Sciwheel account and all the references that I have in it. So here I can, see all my references. I can view them by project. I could view them by tag. So if you were using those tags in a way to organize your information, you could pull only those references that were assigned the tag. I can sort by different things. So you can, sort however it makes sense to you when you're looking at your references. And then you can use these to, insert citations as you're writing. Now, if you wanted to look at it more on the project level, you worked in setting up your project in a certain way that was nice and organized, you can pull that up by going over to these 3 lines here, opening that up and going to project references and notes. So here I can select my project. So if I want to say I'm working in the Workshop Wednesday project, then I can search just within that project. I can see those references by that project folder only, and I can also view all those notes that I made. So here you can, pull those notes. You could either insert the entire note, you could go back and open your record, or you can cite it. So it's like, oh, well, I made, this note, this is really important. And important for paragraph 1. Okay, so this is the one that I'm working on, paragraph 1. I want to cite this. I just click on cite here, and it's going to insert that citation for me. So then I can go on and work with that and do that writing part of it. When you're putting in your article citations, whether you're pulling them from there, or if you're like, okay, which article was it that I was working with? Okay, it was this one. I need to cite this article. So, go down here and cite. When you're putting your citations in, they are unformatted. So, it's suggested that you format them in bulk at the end when you get all done, or you close to done, format them then, and you can select the citation style. If you format it and then you have to go back and edit it and maybe make a change and stuff, if you add additional ones in, those are going to be unformatted and you'll have to reformat those. If you're doing a citation where you have to add in, if you were quoting something, you had to add in a page number or something like that. With the citation, if you're in the citation that you need to edit, you click over here, this gray bar, to open that up, and then you can edit the citation down here. So you could add that page number in, in the suffix area, page 43, let's say. And you can see that right now, because I haven't formatted it at all, it's not in any kind of citation style, it's just saying 1, but it's adding that information in here. If you were doing a narrative citation where you're putting the authors as part of the sentence, you could suppress the author and take that out of the citation from here, and you can update it that way. But you update citation, and then you'll have that information there. And then when you go to format that citation, that information should stay. Okay. I do always recommend checking over all of your citations. I would never, count on Sciwheel or any reference manager getting everything 100% correct. So, it's a really good base to start from. But I always recommend making sure that, everything's in whatever style, you're working with, the correct formatting, and that kind of thing. So when you are ready to, you can insert citations up here also, but when you are ready to format, you go to Format Citations, and you can choose what style you're working from. So a lot of my areas, or most, I think all of my areas, work with APA. So let's look for APA. And there are some variations of APA in here. So let me go down and just get the APA's 7th. Okay, and it's giving me an idea of what it's going to look like. And then I can add style and update citations and bibliography. And then that's going to put that in there for me. Okay, so you can see the in-text citations now are showing in the APA 7th style. It did keep the page number that I added, and then it's pulled in those references to make a bibliography list. So one of the things that I do suggest, if you need to, make some edits to the document and maybe have one that's completely formatted as your final document, all of these are being imported as these are linked to your Sciwheel account. So that's how it's able to connect them and pull in all this information for you. These are actually links. So I do suggest keeping a version that has those links in there in case you need to go back and make edits. You have those in there. If you go and start to change things after you've done this and say, you know, I'm working on making it right for my paper, I'm changing things, you know, this is linking to your Sciwheel here. So you need to, you know, remove that link and then maybe make the DOI show as a link, you know, have it in proper formatting or whatnot. Then you try to go to update citations, it's not going to work. So I would suggest keeping a file that is unformatted before you make any edits, and then, you know, having that file that you're going through and making all those final edits to have a final version of your document. So that is really all of the information that I have to share with you today. So if there are any questions at this time, I am going to open up the chat. Doesn't look like I've received any questions so far. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer them. Hopefully some of this information is useful, whether, you know, no matter what kind of project you're working on. I think that there's something to get from all the examples that we looked at, and hopefully it's going to be helpful to you. So can you pull more than one note at a time into Word? So if you're working on with the notes, let me go ahead and pull that back up and show you how those pull into Word. You saw my draft. So if you're in the notes, you have the option. So if you click on insert, that's going to pull in all of that information. Okay. So it's going to pull in like the highlighted area that I had put the important for paragraph 2, all of that. So that's what happens with that. If you were to make multiple notes saying, oh, this information is important for this, and I need to cite both of those. If you click on cite, and then the same, let's say you needed to cite this as well, cite, it's going to add those citations together for you. So as long as you're in the same area, you can, even from, you know, not just where you've made notes on them, but just from any of your references, you can add multiple references into the same citation.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, well, it looks like we're at time anyways. So if there's no more questions, I think that brings us to the end of the workshop today. So thanks for watching, and remember that you can always reach out to your librarian if you have any questions about using Sciwheel. We are always happy to help. Thank you very much.